Female sexual act is a motor response which includes excitement, plateau, orgasm, and resolution. In this video, I am going to tell you how this motor response occurs. Hey everyone, welcome back to HM Learnings. I am Harshita, the creator of HM Learnings, where students come to clear their concept and to get the study material. Make sure you subscribe my channel. So today we are back with another video on the reproductive physiology, which is a female sexual act. The male sexual act is already there on the channel. I will share the link in the description box and the I button. So I'll advise you or recommend you to watch that video also, because that will help you. Both these videos, if you watch both of them, it will help you to understand that how the sexual act is different between the sexes, and also there are some similarities between the sexual act in these two different sexes. So we will start the video by introducing that what is female sexual act. So like the male sexual act, it is also a orderly reflex response to sexual stimulation. So it is basically a kind of a motor response, and it is a kind of a reflex. So we already know how does a reflex occurs. There is a stimulation, then there is efferent fiber, then there is center, then efferent, then effector, and finally the response is coming. So similarly here, this is also a kind of a reflex which is happening, but there are multiple reflex, multiple motor responses which are happening. So these motor responses include the excitement. First motor response is excitement, followed by plateau, followed by orgasm, and then the resolution. So there are four motor responses which are occurring, and this is happening in an order in response to the sexual stimulation. So excitement is going to be initiated by the sexual stimulation, then there is a motor response which is happening during the excitement phase, then that is going to act as a sensation or as a stimulation for the next motor response, plateau. Plateau motor responses is going to act as a stimulation for the orgasm, then the orgasm is going to act as a reflex for the resolution. So one motor response is acting as a stimulation for the next motor response, and this is happening in an order. So that is the female sexual act. This is the same thing which is happening in the male sexual act also, which is involving your erection, emission and ejaculation, which is also occurring in order. Now, like all the reflexes, this is also going to be modulated or can be modified by the descending inputs which are coming from the higher brain areas. It is a spinal reflex. The center is at the sacral spinal cord. So what is the stimulation? We are talking about sexual stimulation. What does it mean? What are the types of the stimulation which could initiate the sexual act in the female? So sensory stimulation, like if there is stimulation of tactile stimulation or any type of other stimulation of the external genitalia, like glands of the clitoris, which is the most sensitive part, vulva, vagina, and the other perineal regions. Then there could be psychic stimulation, thinking, sight, dreaming of sexual act, and even the emotional state of a female. Now, this is different what happens in the case of the male, like sensory stimulation and psychic stimulation is also there in the male, but there are no any such modulators which are present in the case of the female, which is being defined as a physiological drive to the sexual response. So what happens in the female, as the cycle is there, menstrual cycle is there, during which the hormones, the sex steroids, they are also fluctuating cyclically. These hormones, the sex steroids, are also influencing the physiological drive to the sexual response, which is called as a libido. So libido is basically a kind of it is basically a sexual desire. So in the female, the sexual desire also changes with the cycle, and this is because there are changes in the level of the sex steroids hormone, majorly estrogen. So when the estrogen is at the peak level, like during the time of the ovulation, the estrogen is a kind of a positive modulator of the sexual desire in the female. So at that time, there is increase in the sexual desire in the female. Such type of modulation is not seen in the male. So this libido, which is actually being modulated by the levels of the estrogen, it can modulate how the female responds to sensory stimulus and psychic stimulation. So Next, we will talk about what are the stages of female sexual act. So first is the excitation, then plateau, then orgasm, and then there is resolution. So basically, excitement phase is a beginning of the female sexual act. During this is also called as the arousal phase or the seduction phase. So the name itself says that this is basically the initiation phase, and this is initiated by both psychic and sensory stimulation, which we have discussed in the previous slide, and going to be modulated definitely by the circulating steroids, which leads to the motor response, as it is a as it is basically a motor act. So ultimately a motor response is going to happen. So what is a reflex arc? Reflex arc is stimulus, we already know, touch, psychic, or both, modulated by the sex steroids hormone. Efferent fiber is a pudendal nerve. Center is the sacral spinal cord, S2 to S4 segments. The efferent is going to be majorly mediated by the parasympathetic nerves. So if you remember, we have talked about the erection in the case of the male, where we have said that erection is basically mediated by the parasympathetic nerves. Similarly, here also excitement phase, the efferent nerves are the parasympathetic nerves from the sacral cord. If the female is taking any kind of anticholinergic drug, this is going to be affected. Not only the efferents are going to the external genitalia and the perineal muscles, which are the effectors, they're also going to the cerebrum for the psychic stimulation. So there are a range of the effectors which are there in the female. I haven't listed all of them. I listed only the external genitalia and the perineal muscles, but the idea of extent of the effectors could be have by taking into consideration the responses. So there is vast range of responses which are happening during the excitement phase in the female, like warmth and the erotic feelings, increased sexual tension. So this is basically defined as a generalized constriction of the muscle throughout the body. So that means there is so many effectors in the body which are there, on which the nerves are acting to bring the excitement in the female during the sexual act. Then deep breathing. So autonomic responses are also there, like there is increase in the intensity of the breathing, there is increase in the heart rate, there is increase in the blood pressure, then there is vasoconstriction throughout the body, and also there is skin flush. Now breast engorgement, that is there is increase in the blood supply to the breast, there is erection of the nipple, which is a kind of a myotonic effect. So there is contraction of the muscles which lead to the nipple erection, or there is increase in the blood supply also. Uterine tenting into pelvis. So this means that tenting of uterus basically means that the uterus is going to pull up, which causes the lengthening of the vagina. So ultimately the vagina is actually going to be increased in the length because of the pulling of the uterus. This is called as an uterine tenting. Then engorgement of all the external genitalia, that is labia and the clitoris. So how does it happen? Engorgement means there is increase in the blood supply to these areas, and there is also lubrication, which is being done by increasing vaginal sweating, increase in the vaginal epithelium secretion, and secretions from the Bartholin glands. So basically this is somehow very similar to what happens in the male, with which is involving the engorgement also. In the male also there is engorgement of the penile tissue, erectile tissue. Also there is increase in the mucus production by the glands, uteral glands in the male, to lead to the lubrication. So that's why I said that you watch this video also and the male sexual act video also to have a holistic understanding. Now we will see more in detail some of the responses which we have seen. Like we have talked about the how does the engorgement is happening, how does the vaginal sweating and secretion is happening, and how does the sexual tension is increasing throughout the body. So like sexual stimulation is there, then the pudendal nerve is going to take that sensation to the center, which is S2 and S4. Then from there the parasympathetic nerve is going to take the sensation to the supply the genitalia. So in genitalia it is going to supply the blood vessels which are supplying the genitalia. Okay, so parasympathetic nerve endings is going to end at the blood vessel which are supplying the genitalia, and it is going to release the nitric oxide, acetylcholine, and vasoactive intestinal peptide. So how does the nitric oxide act? It is already being mentioned in the male sexual act. You can watch it. Ultimately, there is increase in the blood supply to the labia and the clitoris, which is the engorgement. So there is a relaxation of the smooth muscles of the blood vessel. There is dilatation of the blood vessels, and there is increase in the blood supply to these areas. So this is one of the response which is happening during the excitation phase in the female sexual act. Then another thing is that the parasympathetic nerves are also going to supply the epithelium glands and other glands for the secretion, so that the lubrication could be happening. Then the S2 S4 segment is not only sending the impulses to other areas but also to the cerebrum, that we have already seen, for the generalized tension throughout the body. So it makes sense because sexual segments are going to send the fibers arising from them to the external genitalia area, to the reproductive area, urogenital areas. But what about the changes, responses which are happening above the sacral segment? Like there is increase in the tension throughout the body, there is increase in the breast engorgement, there is increase in the other responses is also there, like there is deep breathing, increased heart rate. So how does those is happening? Because there is because the segments are also sending the inputs to the other segments from where the inputs have been taken to their effectors and bring about the particular response. So from this you can see how the excitation phase is involving the whole body in the female. So now this is very similar to what happens in the male. The degree of the stimulation, more intense is the stimulation. So there are two things. One thing is that the magnitude of the stimulation, which is called as the intensity of the stimulation. Another thing is the duration of the stimulation. Both of them adds to the degree of the stimulation. So more duration and more magnitude of the stimulation increases the degree of the response. Like there will be more intense motor response, more magnitude motor response which is going to happen, and this is going to rise in the crescendo fashion. So crescendo fashion means that if you're applying a stimulation and the stimulation is also increasing in the intensity, your motor response is also going to increase in the intensity. So this is might not be the exact graph, but gradual increase is happening, ultimately reaching to the peak level, and that peak level is called as the plateau phase, which we will be seen in the next slide. So degree of stimulation is basically including what is the magnitude of the stimulation and how long the stimulation is being done, and more stimulation, and ultimately more stimulation and more intense stimulation during the excitement phase leads to more pronounced orgasm activity. That is basically more pronounced motor response in the female. So more longer the excitement phase, more intense excitement phase is there, more pronounced orgasm activity is going to happen in the female. Now we will switch on to the next phase, which is the plateau phase. So plateau phase is actually the end of the excitement phase. So during the excitement phase, what was happening? There is stimulation which is happening, and the motor and the sexual responses start to occur. So when the sexual response has reached to its peak, is called as the plateau phase. Now beyond that, there will be no further increase in the motor response. That is the plateau phase. So we have seen already the list of the things which has happened during the excitement phase. During the plateau phase, there are additional, those changes are already there which have happened during the excitement phase. Apart from this, the other changes are also there, add on in the plateau phase, which involves the engorgement of the lower third of vagina with narrowing of diameter and dilation of upper 2/3 of vagina, and clitoral erection is there. So how does it happen? The same thing is being there, but because there is more the stimulation has reached to its peak now, so other fibers are also going to be stimulated, other parasympathetic fibers are also going to be stimulated, and they are going to they are going to do the tightening of introitus. So introitus is basically the vaginal opening. So vagina is going to be tightened, the lumen of the vagina is going to be tightened, and this has happened because of the engorgement. So engorgement means there is increase in the blood supply to the areas, the tissues which are making the opening of the vagina. So that engorgement leads to the tightening of the troitus, and ultimately that causes what, that is going to have a tight tension around the penis. So then the upper third of the vagina, upper 2/3 of the vagina are going to be dilated. This is also going to be to increase the, so that the penis could be accommodated, so it could be accommodated well. So that has happened as a result of a plateau phase. During the plateau phase, these are going to be happening. Then apart from this, the erection is going to happen. So erection phase is there in the male, but in the female that phase is not called erection but the excitement in the plateau phase. So erectile tissue is also there in the female, like erection of the clitoris is going to happen. Then labia minora and labia majora is also going to like the erectile tissue. So that is also going to happen because there is engorgement, that is increase in the blood supply to these areas. So in the plateau phase, so starting from the excitement phase is basically the starting, is basically the beginning, and then they will be, when it reached to the peak, there is plateau phase, during which there is dilation of the upper 2/3 of the vagina, and there is tightening of the vaginal opening. Then there is erection of the erectile tissue of the female also. So now, because the female has reached finally the plateau of the motor response, it will be followed by the orgasm. So you can see how everything is happening one after the other. So you can see that for the orgasm, the stimulation is actually the plateau phase. For the plateau phase, the stimulation is the excitement phase. So orgasm is basically the climax, the end of the sexual act, and this is mediated by the sympathetic division, like initiation is mediated by the sympathetic division in the men. So what happens during the orgasm? There is release of the tension which has developed throughout the body. Okay, then there is myotonic contractions. Myotonic contraction means muscle contractions which are happening, and this is basically rhythmic contractions. So rhythmic contraction means, but they are having a rhythm. After certain frequency they are repeating, so their frequency is 0.8 seconds intervals. So after the female enters into the orgasm phase, the muscle contraction is going to start after 2 to 4 seconds after the female entered into orgasm, and then they continued at an interval of 0.8 seconds interval. This could vary from woman to woman. This is also a general statement. So there is generalized rhythmic myotonic contractions throughout the body. There is contraction of the perivaginal muscles, similarly which has happened in the male also, and the anal sphincter also is going to be contracted. Uterus is also going to be contracted. So if you remember, we have talked about, I think in a video of translocation of sperm, where we have talked about that how does the contraction of the uterus help in causing the sperm translocation from the vagina to the fallopian tube. So this is happening during the orgasm phase. The uterus contracts, and it contracts in such a way which is going to pull the sperm from the vagina towards the fallopian tube. So this helps in actually conceiving. So this has been seen that in the female who are having sexual intercourse, the insemination of the semen in those females are more successful in conceiving as compared to the artificial insemination. So the rate of the conception is more in the female who are having sexual intercourse rather than the female who are having the artificial insemination, maybe because of the contraction of the uterus which is happening during the orgasm phase during the sexual intercourse in the female. Then after this, so the orgasm is also going to be ended, followed by resolution, the phase during which there is all the excitement comes to the normal, all the motor responses are going to be rest, come to the basal state. There is returning to the pre-excitement state. There is feeling of satisfaction and well-being, and the new excitement cycle can be initiated in the case of the female. So it is already known that multiple orgasms could occur in the female. There is no refractory phase which occurs in the men. In the female there is no refractory phase, so new excitement cycles may be initiated. So you can say that there are some similarities between the male and the female. Like there is erection in the male also, erection in the female also. Both of them are being done by the parasympathetic nerves. Like then there is orgasm, which occurs in male also, in female also. And then there is difference also being there. Like there is modulation of the sexual desire in the female, which is not there much in the males. Then resolution is also being there, which resolution is also there in both of the sexes, but in the case of the male, the refractory phase is there, but in the female there is no refractory phase. So this brings us to the end of this video. These are the two references I have looked for this topic. You can look to these references for more detail. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe. Till then, keep learning.